Have you ever come up with an idea so awful that you just had to try it? I've been playing TCG Card Shop Simulator, and after seeing some other challenges pop up on my YouTube feed, I thought I'd try my own. But little did I know that this was going to be the worst challenge ever. My card shop was not going to sell anything. No packs, no accessories, no cards, nothing at all. There would be no sales at the counter, no ordering stock, and no managing shelves at all. But let's back up for a second. What is this game? Well, if you normally watch me, you might be familiar with what a card shop is. It's your local game store, silly. This is where you go to indulge your inner child. You buy trading cards, accessories, and other luxuries. Bills? Not today. Food? 1 packet of crisps, please. You're here for a good time, so dispense with the adult responsibilities, sleeve up your favorite trading card game deck, and head down to your local game store. TCG Card Shop Simulator puts you in the shoes of our local game shop proprietor.
Hello.
From the discerning collector to the avid tournament grinder, you're there behind the counter making sales, ordering stock, and dealing with the more problematic gamers at your discretion. It's a lot of work, and every day is a race to juggle all of these tasks in order to make the most of your business hours. As a real-world business owner, this is the work that makes you money. But as a casual card shop simulator player, this is the part that keeps you busy, and striving to be on top of all of these little tasks is what makes the game fun. Something dopamine, or something like that. So this is what makes this challenge the worst. Because what if we took all of that away? What if there was no product sales, no stock ordering, or shelf replenishing? The store might look like this. Yes, it would look like this. This is the story of how I ran a successful card shop where I can only sell, well, nothing. It's not even a card shop. Day 1. There it is. A vacant storefront like a blank canvas. My store and my hopes in one small lot. There's a gaudy, bright yellow sign emblazoned across the top, standing out like a sore thumb amongst a neighborhood of red brick and other earthy tones. But in today's economy, I have to stand out. I need to draw the eye, even if it means drawing the ire of local residents. Gaming was a counterculture before what it was today, so maybe standing out isn't so bad. I step forward towards my future and, more importantly, out of the way of incoming traffic as I behold my store. I quit my day job to open my own card game store. This is it. Time to get down to business. I know I'm trying to be the narrator here, but something about making a video like this and reading that particular statement hits way too close to home. Which is to say, I'm not quitting my day job anytime soon. It's time to name my shop, and thus begins the divergence of my business strategy from the typical local game store, because really it's not a store at all. The goal of this challenge is to establish a business that sells nothing. If I'm not selling a product, then what I can do is sell a service. And what services can you sell in TCG Card Shop Simulator, you may ask? Well, it's table space and events. And thus, straight to the point, just like your narrator, I christened my store with the name Just Tables, because what more does your local card game event enjoyer want more than just a table and chairs? Perfect. I walk in. Hardwood floors, an ample but unnecessary countertop, and a single barren shelf. I check my phone as the centerpiece needed is only a few taps away. Alas, the local ordinance decrees that no shop below level 2, some arbitrary measure of merit, shall be permitted tables and chairs within their tenancy. How bizarre. It's council regulators gone mad with power, I tell you. No wonder small businesses are doomed to fail more often than not. No matter, I will kowtow to the local laws and meet their demands to fulfill my dreams. of running a store which is just tables. That's it. So it was on to our first task. Open the phone, stock up on card packs. A few taps on my trusty iPhone 6S later, and we were the proud owner of 32 loose Tetramon card packs. These are the foundation of more conventional game stores. No sooner had I put my phone away, do I spy a package on the sidewalk. For me, perhaps? Sure enough, a cardboard box containing my order had already been delivered. A marvel of proficiency in the modern age. After grappling with the concept of a cardboard box for a moment, I unpacked the freshly ordered packs and set the box aside. Next, I must set the price. I don't want to run a store based on product sales. That would be against the goal of the challenge, but I can't set it to 0. 1 cent will do. Also, we don't need to sell all of these packs. What if we just took all the packs away? Perfect. Or so I thought. There's a problem. I need to earn XP to reach shop level 2. It was going to take a little bit of experimentation. So I placed a single pack on the shelf, and thus begins the pursuit of happiness and a table for card games. In walks our first customer, an enthusiastic, mustachioed fellow walking in at 8:15 in the morning. Truly a person who knows what they want. A straight back, but a gaze so wholly focused that his chin was tucked into his neck. A single pack on the shelf. I take my position behind the counter. Our first customer hands over the cash. I struggle with the concept of a quarter while giving back change. A sale is made and 5 XP is received. While this attempt at my challenge is ruined, I have gained knowledge. After pondering my fate in this cursed timeline, I decided to conduct another experiment. I open the box of 31 remaining boosters and hastily fetch a handful. I open the packs with a finesse suggesting that I'm quite seasoned. One by one, the cards are revealed, but the contents are not so important as the realization that opening packs also rewards XP. Eureka! I have a strategy, and then a snap. A world of dreams disappears like a handful of sand. I start again. Newly resolved to stick to the plan, I will open a business and I will not sell a single product. It would not be right to take the name of the previous reality store, but I do need to inspire pedestrians. Cool Tables. A name equal parts straightforward, absurd, and inspiring. Okay, time for the new plan. Open the phone, order the packs. Pick up the package, and set the package down. Pick up as many booster packs as I could fit in my ethereal invisible hands, and get to work. Pack by pack, I reveal cards, and more importantly, I earn XP. The rarer the contents, the bigger the gain. Pack number 16 is opened and ding! Just like that, I reach shop level 2. Success! At last I would be permitted to purchase a table and chairs for commercial use. I open the My DIY app and promptly complete my purchase. There it is, finally, my table. My 4-legged sturdy friend. There was no time to waste. I hastily shed the packaging as I stepped into my store. I took a moment to orient, and then with a thud, the table was set. Unsure if I could progress the game without completing the set tasks, I did the bare minimum by placing a pack on the shelf, attempting to set a price, reboxing the pack, and then finally flipping the open sign. Cool Tables was open for business. Finally, my challenge could begin. A flurry of customers eagerly anticipating the grand opening of Cool Tables come filing in, and then they inspect a shelf barren of product, shaking their head in disappointment. They turn and they leave immediately. But what about the table? Behold its multi-legged glory, a symbol of human activity, a place to share meals, ideas, a place to make deals. Yes, the table is great. My table would bring prosperity, but they zoomed in on the shelf and left in despair despite happiness being a mere sidestep to the right. Maybe it was the placement. I moved the table to a more central location. I hide the box of packs, which serve only as a distraction. I checked the sidewalk. More customers. Surely word of the new table store had begun to spread and a more discerning clientele were on their way. It was time to return to the counter and stand at the ready. Merely a symbolic gesture, of course, as I wouldn't be scanning any products. One by one, new customers file in, and while the first did as the first batch did, our second customer heads straight for the table. They even conscientiously take the seat furthest away, as if to sit at the ready for a potential opponent to sit across from them. A third customer walks in and almost looks as though they too will be departing no sooner than they walked in, but perhaps on a whim, suddenly sits down, and thus the first game of Tetramon commences. Fantastic. Having customers sit down at the tables to play is how Cool Tables will earn money. Each day, your store in TCG Card Shop Simulator will host a Tetramon event. Players will sit down to play cards, and you will earn both money and XP based on how long the players sit and play. With the store at 100% capacity, I thought to myself, what if a new customer walks in wanting to play at Cool Tables and there's no more tables? I shuddered at the thought and promptly ordered a second table. With a thud, my humble table store had doubled in customer capacity. The successes just continued to roll in on the first morning of trade. No sooner had I placed the table, new customers began to flow in, and despite the prime positioning of the new table, they homed in on the shelf. This wretched shelf, which served as nothing but a distraction. In a swift movement, I took the shelving in hand right in front of the new customer, boxed it, and sold it. No more would it distract customers. Almost in protest, the customers marched around the store, a disapproving shake of the head, but perhaps too socially awkward to make eye contact with me. Customer sentiment, I understand, is a sliding scale. But the store is called Cool Tables. What do you want from me? I took a moment to rearrange the store and suddenly, cha-ching, my first customers pay their table fee of $10.62 each. A cool $20 and change, all for the privilege of experiencing the cool tables at Cool Tables. Truly an elevated gaming experience for the discerning Tetramon masters of today. The first customer even walks around in a daze, seemingly overwhelmed by their Nirvana-like experience. Or was it disapproval? He shakes his head, but I pay it no mind. I tidy the store a little bit and wait for the next customers to arrive. One arrives and leaves in disgust. Another arrives and sits down for a game. The next is not interested and has the gall to look at me and shake their head. At least he was honest. Our store services aren't for everyone. Finally, another patron enters and makes a beeline for the table by the window. Another game of Tetramon is underway. Yes, there's no need to worry. See? The people like the tables. People want tables. I briefly check my bills. No expenses yet, but a looming worry. Are these meager payments going to be adequate? I did once peer into the void and watch a video that demonstrates that you can soft lock your progress in the game if you do not have the means to make money. But as quickly as that risk of failure entered my mind, I banished the thought. Tables! They would be my salvation. Everybody likes tables. A third person sits. Then nothing. Time passes. No new customers. A table in the store is only as profitable as long as a customer is sat across from another, and I couldn't possibly spare the time to be a table partner. I opened the Reno app and consider the first shop expansion. I recalled reading the Twitch chat of a fellow entrepreneur who claimed that expanding the store results in more customers. Trusting a rumor about the inner workings of a video game was a phenomenon that felt lost to a time before we had the internet. But I went into this challenge semi-blind and intended to verify my thesis without more than this to go on. For science! I purchased the expansion. Suddenly there was more space where there was not before. A small nook around the corner. Right on cue, more customers were inbound. Success. 2 full tables. Time wore on during the day. Then at 4:30 p.m., a woman walked in, wanting to play, but there was a problem. The tables were full. The fear that I had from earlier today manifested, and I had to act fast. I didn't have time to think about my bank balance. My DIY. I need a third table. Right now. A dizzying dash, table and chairs in hand, I mark out a spot, and then with a familiar thud, the third table is set. And yet she was uninterested. Did I make an error? Was this now too many tables? I adjusted the placement a couple of times, and finally, she took a seat. Fantastic. Another couple of transactions. $20 for each patron this time. The money and XP was rolling in, even if some confusion remained about the lack of other services or products on offer. We do one thing and one thing well at Cool Tables. Public opinion aside, some leave and others sit down expectantly. It's 6:30 and we have almost a full house. Surely by now, if not already, we were seeing the affluent denizens of the surrounds finish work, grab dinner, and then roll on in to Cool Tables to enjoy a modicum of freedom between their earthly adult responsibilities. And then suddenly, a dankness befalls the store.
Uh-oh.
A portly man, confident stride, pants, boots, and a shirt walks in. The patrons are either too polite or too engrossed in their Tetramon games to comment, but I could see, or smell, clear as day, that this was a high-level nerd with a bodily odor to match. He observes the ongoing games and surveys the store, turning his own nose up at the concept of a store with only tables, and promptly exits. Reprieve. For now. The night continues. We head into our final hour of trade and everything is going to plan. Full tables, happy customers. Check your worries at the door and let's play. As the evening winds up, people start finishing their games. A few stragglers lose track of time. I flick the lights on and off a few times and they get the message. Well, mostly. Eventually, I ask the gentleman to leave, and just like that, our opening day comes to a close. I check the report, and it's a sobering document. A stark reminder that it's all fun and games until you check the bottom line. A $769.56 loss is more than a worrying trend, but it is early days. Somebody once said you have to spend money to make money, and we spent a lot, so we will be due. Surely. Our income just needs to outpace our bills, and as long as we can achieve that, then Cool Tables will be here to stay. Day 2. Day 2 begins and the usual early morning loiterers pass through without anything nice to say. Begone! One particularly persistent fellow seemed to pace back and forth, almost in protest. Our first customer to sit down was the same one who seemed to persist in store long after closing the day before. A passionate Tetramon competitive through and through. He would have his game of Tetramon no matter how long he had to wait, and before long he had an opponent to finally enjoy a game. Great news for us, as otherwise the first couple hours of trade were very uneventful. Nervously, I checked the bills. $81 and change was owed. A number set to climb as the week continued. From memory, we were on top of this for now with our projected earnings and reserves to fall back on, so it may yet be a question of how frugal the store would need to be, and would this be acceptable for our patrons? Would the store be good enough for them, or would they take their business elsewhere? Our first customers had finished their session, netting a cool $24.50 between them. But there were still no other patrons. Being so wholly focused on one thing well has positives and negatives, and the risk of there being no demand was rearing its head. One by one, uninterested customers filed in and out, until finally, yes, a customer. Please don't worry, we'll find an opponent for you before too long. Painfully, awkwardly, others paced around him. Together we waited, until finally an opponent and only our fourth customer walked in, and together they played one game. $2 and some change each. It was barely enough to keep the lights on today, let alone pay rent. But just as soon as they were done, another player sat down at the ready. This volatility of uptake on the tables had to be expected, but it was disheartening to reach the 3 p.m. mark and have so little to show for today's trade thus far. Perhaps patience was needed. After all, anybody with the time and money for Tetramon probably had other daily duties to tend to. The sun was beginning to set. There was still so many business hours left, and I had to believe the town's table enthusiasts would show up. Our tables were cooler than anywhere else. Thinking ahead, perhaps a cheaper entry fee would encourage the take-up of tables. I set the fee for tomorrow's games to $6.50, and perhaps as a sign of goodwill, more players entered for games of Tetramon. As a side note, at this point, I'd still yet to realize that setting the cost of events in the app wouldn't apply until the next day of trade, but just know that for now going forward. There's that typical volatility, nearly a full house to empty in a flash. But there's always more on their way to play. The rest of the evening is like this. Moments of busy tables interspersed with the quiet moments, all the way up until closing time. For all the time spent open, Cool Tables earned a paltry $83.17. But that was pure profit. There were no supply or upgrade costs, no employees to pay for, or needed quite frankly, and as yet, no bills immediately due. We were on the up and up. Never mind the dissatisfaction rating. Day 3. A third day of trade and our routine was settling. Today we would test a small discount on events to encourage the take-up of our services. Cool tables at affordable prices. Maybe the slogan could do with some work? It was 11:15 before our first game commenced. Gamers are typically not morning people, and today was evident of that. A pungent-smelling man walks in and out, but otherwise the day proceeds at an uneventfully slow pace. After a few tables worth of games, the day eventually became the evening, and the room began to really fill. Though finally I was met with a problem I'd been putting off. So far, I was able to ignore the more hygienically challenged customers, but then one well-dressed but offensively smelling individual sat down for a game. On the one hand, I don't want to turn away a paying customer, but on the other, it only takes one bad smell to deter another, and I had to do something fast. I whipped out the iPhone and acquired a cleanser license. Yes, in this town, you must pay for the privilege of purchasing supplies. No wonder cleanliness was a problem with its citizenry. I immediately order a box's worth and set about retrieving the package. I open the box and fumble it, perhaps in a body odor-induced daze. There wasn't any time. I proceed to the customer, can in hand, and before I could save the day, they'd finished their Tetramon game and said customer was on their way out, none the wiser. No matter, I now had a valuable supply of canisters at the ready for future odorous ordeals. Despite the mishap, by late evening we had a full house, a strong finish to the day. I quickly reviewed the finances and once again we were in the red, our emergency purchase eating all of our profits and leaving us in a worse position than we opened with. It was unfortunate, but a stark reality of small businesses everywhere. Day 4. Our fourth day begins and I pretend not to notice a foul-smelling window shopper before opening the store. Looking ahead, I adjust our prices again. It did not seem like the 50-cent discount was significant, so I pushed our price back up towards the standard price seen elsewhere. We would see tomorrow if that makes a difference, but for today, we will monitor the $6.50 price point. The day proceeds like others before it. Some play, some are in dismay. No matter. Another foul-smelling customer walks in, but does not appear to want to stay very long, so I didn't take any action. This time, my frugal decision is punished, and another potential client is deterred. Ugh, the stench, they proclaim. I wouldn't let that happen again. The cleanser will be sprayed on sight, or in this case, on smell. I check the bills. The amount is beginning to creep upwards as the due date approaches. I couldn't worry about that right now, I just had to do the best job I could. In the afternoon, I hit an important milestone, a new type of event to try and future thanks to the efforts of so many players. I could test to see if the pauper format would entice more people to sit down and play, even if the secondary effect of these events would not be realized under the Cool Tables business plan. The pauper event carries a risk to experiment with, however, due to the initial outlay of hosting these events. I had to be sure that I had the funds to spare in the long term before trying it out. The day winds down and I review our daily report. An encouraging return to the green. No supply costs means today's earnings all went straight into the Cool Tables coffers. Day 5. You know the drill by now. Flip the sign, wait for customers. Later in the morning, I smell a bad omen approaching, or in this case, a potential gamer. I make for the cleanser, pick out a canister and spray them a generous amount. Customers would be deterred no more. Later that day, I'd get another. Spray! Spray! I'd settled into a routine now, and unlike your usual business owner, much of that is spent idle, passively watching and waiting. My job was to curate a space for the battles of the mind. The Cool Tables do the work, and I'm merely here to keep things orderly. Another day and another dollar. In this case, just a smidge over $100 in the bank for a meager 10 games played. Day 6. On the previous day, I decided to schedule a pauper event for day 6. If you'll recall, I still didn't fully grasp how setting the events would affect the next day, but I would soon learn as I was hit with an immediate $50 fee before I'd even open the doors to customers. In any case, it was time to try a pauper event. Characterized by the use of cheaper cards, the hope was that it would entice more players into chairs. Success! Barely half an hour had passed and we had a game underway. The middle of the morning hit and the store was empty. Were people not interested? I paused for a moment and checked my phone. The upcoming bills were accounted for with our current bank balance, and yet I considered, could I possibly afford to expand the shop in hopes of encouraging more to visit? I was still experimenting with the idea I had previously read elsewhere that expanding the store nets more visitors. While I could risk it, I thought better of it for now and waited to see how the rest of the day would go. Our throughput was relatively on par with previous days. Some eager to play, many who shook their head and leave. At 7:15, we were able to achieve a full house of players. By any metric, today was turning out to be a success. Before the end of the day, I set the next day's event to be standard again and set the price all the way down to $5 as the next experiment. Reviewing today's numbers, despite the cost of running the event, we made a tidy $166 profit. Not too bad at all. Day 7. Today I flipped the sign, and when I checked my phone, a notification mark was set against the bill payment app. Years of responding to notifications compelled me thusly to pay my bills, and in one fell swoop, I demonstrated that I could turn a profit with just tables. I had many days ahead of me and not a bill left to pay. You could even dismiss the need to move forward with the challenge here, but I wanted to see what heights I could push our concept store of Cool Tables to. Could we build bigger capacity? Could we reach new markets of table enthusiasts? It begins with today's discounted event fee experiment, and we were off to a typically slow start. Never trust your store's throughput before dark is what I've learned. Despite that, the day's takings were on the lower side, and the volume of players who sat down reflected that. Day 8. Before I did anything, I prepared tomorrow's fee to be closer to the regular market price. Today's event would be the last at the $5 price point, and then I decided to take the plunge and gamble on expanding the store. I handed over the very last of my remaining funds in a calculated risk. I didn't have any required expenses soon and wasn't planning on a non-standard event tomorrow, and I had a stock of cleanser. As long as today's takings weren't too dire, I would be okay. I just needed to remember that store expansions also result in a higher rent cost. Not a huge worry, but something to keep in mind. I take a moment to arrange the tables more aesthetically. Without stopping the store, the tables were free to be arranged in a way that gave patrons ample space. Although the start was a little slow, there was a pretty encouraging bustle in the middle of the afternoon. The customer throughput was still difficult to judge, but any day with stretches of time with at least one full table, if not two, was good news. The end of day report indicated an uptick in the games played, and the day's taking was up over $200, and that was even with the discounted rate. It was a promising sign that expanding the store was the right choice. Day 9. Day 9 starts, and it's slow even amongst the slowest days in the store. Just be patient. It's 5 p.m. It'll pick up, won't it? It's after 6 p.m. But finally, the tables start to fill, and just after 7, we have a full house. So full, in fact, that one person is stood watching a game in progress. We can't have that. Throwing caution to the wind and immediately forgetting that the tables were largely empty today, I put the store's savings down on a 4th table. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. And although that potential player seemed to leave in the time it took for me to place the new table, we were now ready to meet higher demand. It was a mediocre day and some questionable decisions, but the long-term growth of the store would see need for more tables in the play space sooner or later. Day 10. It was time to dust ourselves off and begin a new day, and we were off to a pretty good start. A few playmakers, more than a few head shakers. Can we build up our bank balance again? It was a pretty good day. The day's takings going towards the next bill payment as long as I can resist any more impulsive spending. Although I needed to be careful, I decided to experiment with hosting a fire cup, which carries a cost to run but boasts a $10 entry fee on average. Day 11. The day begins and we eat the event fee. $70 down, but hopefully the fiery allure of this themed cup would inspire gamers to play. 8 became 9, and 9 becomes 10, but finally we were underway. I observed nervous, but confident. We needed a couple of good days on the books. I checked the upcoming bills and our balance was not enough yet to cover them. Business began to pick up shortly after lunch. A burst of activity and a boost to the confidence. Sure, there was a mid-afternoon lull, but cool tables had experienced worse. Like clockwork, the twilight hours signaled the end of the workday and more players began to file in. But perhaps disappointingly, the day seemed to peter out towards the end. The fire cup fizzled. Before closing up shop, I decided it wasn't worth gambling any more days on these themed cups and switched back to standard for the next. I even upped the price again to be close to the typical market price. I wanted the balance to stay well clear of our owed bills. And perhaps that was more realistic than I thought. When I checked the balance at the end of the day, despite the initial outlay, we did clear $200. Things were looking good. Day 12. Day 12 was pretty normal. I'd been at this for a while and I knew what to expect. Cool heads and cooler tables would prevail. Never mind the slow daylight hours and the naysayers who should know by now what we're about. The nights hum with activity and our earnest earnings continue to replenish the bank balance. Day 13. It's lucky day 13 and once again we passed the test. I opened the bill payment app and with a couple of days to spare, I paid the bills just shy of $600 and we're in the clear. It's clear at this stage that our ambitious concept store, Cool Tables, was a proven venture. Our bills? Paid. Clientele? Established. Tables? Cool. Day 13 was a victory lap and many a game of Tetramon was played to celebrate. Or a regular amount. It was a profitable day nonetheless and fairly representative of our flourishing enterprise. And so, you get the picture. The days roll by and we're starting to observe a slow yet successfully scaling business. Day 14. The next few days all go according to plan. The store is open, we turn on the lights and sometimes we use the cleanser. On day 15, with our next round of bills being a distant concern for now, I decided to expand the store. Perhaps it was chance, but it did feel as though our foot traffic and time spent at the tables increased in kind. Day 16's takings also reflected that. On day 17, we hit a fantastic milestone. 4 full tables, and a spectator hovering around meant it was time to increase capacity. The public demands cool tables, and tables shall be made available. Even if the customers departed before enjoying the newly added table, it was always a good indicator of when it was time to invest. Day 19 was our third round of bills, just over $700 owed, but thanks to our measured expenditures, we were comfortably able to afford it. We made back more than half that with today's trade, thanks to 30 total games of Tetramon played in store. Towards the end of day 20, again with our upcoming bills being many days away as yet, I decided to complete another store expansion. Finally, there would not be an annoying corner jutting out into the space, a perfect box shape, and hopes that increased attendance would follow the investment. And it did on day 22 as we once again hit a full house. It was time to invest in yet another table. Day 24 of our venture saw us hit a new milestone. Our 500th game of Tetramon was completed in the evening, which granted us a new event to host. Vintage, a curious and in some ways exclusive format which promotes building decks from a very deep and old card pool, inspires a visage of chic, well-to-do competitors whose presence would elevate and solidify Cool Tables as the premier table hosting business citywide. The only risk was the expensive outlay. A $200 cost per day to run the event meant that with increasing rent costs, I would need to tightly control the budget and hope that the entry fee per hour would be enough to make up for it. Thankfully though, we had the money for the next bill payment at the ready, even if the vintage event was a flop and had plenty of time to spare. Day 25 begins and the event cost is immediately deducted. I flipped the sign. It was time for the big event. One player became two and two became three. It was a slow day initially, but as has been the case until now, it always takes a bit of time for the ball to get rolling. The lively bustle of players fills the store, and I'm confident that the day will be a success. Counting the till at the end of the day, I'm astonished. Subtracting our initial outlay, we earned well over $500 on the day, which is a big step up from the standard events we'd been favoring until now. Incredible. And thus, I would say that the challenge is thoroughly beaten. On day 26, I start the day by opening the bill payment app and reconcile our outstanding amounts. Nearly $1,000 in fees paid, but with a healthy amount left over and the promise of successful days of trade ahead, it was a story which had repeated itself across the month. Cool Tables was a roaring success. The day was a repeat of the previous. A fantastic day's earnings had already clawed back much of the money paid on the previous bills, and day 27 was much the same. With dreams of making the days as hands-off as possible, on day 28 I made a new investment back into the business with a pair of auto-scent machines. No longer would I be dashing for the door to cleanse our odorous clientele. After some time spent orienting the machines correctly, I found the right positioning, and thus our dreams of a completely autonomous store were a reality. Day 29 was pretty quiet, but with the bank balance trending in the correct direction, it was of little matter. Day 30 marks the last day of our challenge, a culmination of the fruits of our labor. I take a moment to restock the auto-scent machines and take my place by the counter, a tokenistic action which serves no purpose, as use of the tables was all handled over the air. Not once in this past month had I needed to complete a sale at the counter. But just as a payphone at a mall these days merely frames the environment as a curiosity of times past, I myself have made myself an invisible, irrelevant feature of the store. I've automated and designed my way out of the face-to-face equation. I take time to enjoy it. I observe a game of Tetramon. I view the store from the pavement outside. Customers come and go. Even while so many are still puzzled by the store's concept, enough are sitting down to play that we're succeeding. We're thriving. A customer sits down at midday and looks anxious. Are they new? Don't worry, you'll have an opponent soon. The day proceeds like many before it. The bank balance is looking healthy and we're on track to afford the next round of bills as they arrive. The day begins to wind down. One last round of games are played as the 9 p.m. closing time hits. Once again, our numbers are looking well above the margins needed to afford our operating costs, and by all measures, Cool Tables has been a success. Now, I could press on with this challenge, but as you can see, the speed at which it's possible to scale has begun to slow down. The main cap on our progress is the shop level, which would be expedited were we able to do more than just host events. So, while I'm confident in the success of future attempts at expanding and hosting more elite events, I'm ready to call time on this challenge and let another, perhaps more dedicated maniac attempt to progress further than myself. Thank you all for watching. If you don't normally watch my videos, I'm a competitive Pokemon TCG creator who's decided to try their hand at something a little bit different. If you're watching me for the first time, or if you're a regular here on the channel, please let me know what you thought. I'd love to continue doing the kind of video that lets me stretch my script writing muscles. Once upon a time, I was a writer for a couple of different websites, so it's something that I really enjoy, and maybe that's something you can glean from the word choice that I have throughout the video. But for now, I've been Vice Games, and I'm making good on the second half of my username for once. I'll see you all in the next live stream or video. Goodbye for now.